Good afternoon. My name's Juan Thomas. I'm glad that you are with us today as we host our weekly chair chat. I'm honored to serve as the 2022-23 chair of the ABA Civil Rights and Social Justice section. And I'm so pleased today to welcome my immediate past chair of our section, the 2021-22 chair, Beth Whittenbury, as our guest. Beth, welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, Juan. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Beth, you and I are going to talk today about our respective initiatives and the commonality between them. When you were chair last year, you launched a civic initiative around civic literacy and civic education. Could you kind of share with us your vision around why you launched that initiative and why you believe that civic education is important as an ABA initiative for our section?
Sure. Actually, the theme for my year one is, as I know you remember, it was unity through civic literacy. And in thinking about how I could most make an impact in the 1 year that we have to be chair, right, I realized that our country had become just so divided and divisive over issues really around our democracy. And I felt that if people understood our democracy better, that we would really realize that so many of us are actually on the same page. And so I thought, where better to start than the youth of the country? And so that's why I set up the Civil Rights Civics Institute, which you can now find on our website, and reached out to students really elementary through high school and tried to target those in underserved communities who I thought probably weren't getting civics education in school. And in some states, as we came to find out last year, they couldn't even discuss certain issues in public schools, and gave them an opportunity to ask those questions of us, of our lawyers. And so we actually got over 170 questions back from students around the nation. And then we set about the task of answering those questions, which, as you, I'm sure, are learning as chair, is always a bigger task than you initially envisioned it to be.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So my initial thought was, exactly. So my initial thought was that each of our 21 substantive committees, including our additional task force on education, or excuse me, election protection, would each do a video to answer to a question we got back. But you know, you can do the math. That's only 22, right? And we got over 170 questions back. So I'm really pleased that our sections and our committees stepped up, and they did, for the most part, each of them answer at least one, if not more questions. And we do have over 22 videoed answers up on the CRCI. But it ended up that I had to reach out beyond our section to get as many answers for students as we could. And I have to give a shout out to Baker Donaldson, who through Linda Klein, our past ABA president, Linda Klein, stepped up through their pro bono committee and their DEI committee. And they answered probably half, if not more, of the questions for us. All of them went through a review process to make sure they had the right tone for the ABA and that they didn't include any microaggressions or anything we felt was not appropriate to say. And so for every student question that really pertained to civil rights law, we were able to provide a question, or an answer rather. So I'm very pleased with that. And that was kind of a long-winded answer, but I think I answered your question.
That's a great answer. I want our leadership around civic literacy last year, because one thing that we're doing is continuing your work on continuing to try to make sure people in our section and across the ABA know about the website and still go back to look at that website as a resource of information. Because one thing that I'm trying to encourage as branding of our section is that we continue to build on the work of prior years. We don't want people to start an initiative and then to come in and stop it. It gets disjointed and there's no real continuality of branding of what the section looks like long term. So I'm excited to call what your project was a success. I just wanted to ask you, what do you think will be the long-term impact of the civic literacy initiative that you started?
Well, you know, Juan, that's still unfolding, to be honest with you. I just this past week heard from Baker Donaldson that they were going to be pushing it out for us and letting people know they had worked on it and referring people to it. And I need to give a shout out to my best friend from high school, Linda, who in a volunteer capacity did all the heavy lifting on the logistics for this project because our staff didn't have the bandwidth to do it at all. So this was a completely volunteer done project, constructed, put together, and put up on the website. All of that was volunteer done. But I think because of that and because of the way we solicited the questions through teachers and through our local bar affiliates, we sort of built into it the fact that people would know it was there and go back and use it. And right. So I know that teachers are pulling up the videoed responses for use in the classrooms. I'm hopeful the word gets all the way down to students that it's there as a resource for them. I'm hopeful that, and I know we'll touch on this later, that when you add in the financial literacy portion of the website, that we'll be able to eventually make it so that students can continue to ask questions and get answers. Right. And I'm also very recently at the California Lawyers Association annual meeting, met with Jim Holmes, who has multiple hats as you and I do. He is now not only a delegate at large for the ABA, House of Delegates, but he also is president of the California Lawyers Foundation. One of their pillars is civic literacy. And so I was able to tell him about the project, and we'll be collaborating further this year on using what I've done and collaborating with what he plans to do this year. So as I say, it is unfolding. Every day I hear new ways it's getting used, and that makes me feel like it was worth the effort and it will ultimately bring a big blessing to everyone.
Well, that definitely will, and thank you again for your initiative. You know, this year we're focusing on economic justice, and one of the pillars of economic justice is financial literacy. I wanted to get your thoughts on what do you see as the connection between civic literacy and financial literacy?
Well, again, going back to understanding our democracy, right? Our hand in hand with our democracy is that we are a capitalistic system, right? And I think if you understand how those two things go together, you also begin to understand that for our democracy to function, our capitalism can't be unbridled. In other words, we do need regulations. And that is really a civics topic, and it's one that we cover on the CRCI on our website. And so they do go hand in hand. To be a functioning member of our society and our democracy, you both need to understand the foundations of our democracy and how it works, as well as how to be financially responsible and make good fiscal choices in your own life, and also understand how they're made at a governmental level. So if they're not being made correctly or the best way, you'll also know how you can impact that and fix that, right? So they really are almost married, if you will, right? It's great that you are bringing this other side in, and so that we will have a more robust and fulfilled website when we're done.
Right. But I totally agree. And I believe to be a good citizen is not just knowing, as you said, about your government and how policy is made and our role as being a productive citizen, but also how to be a responsible citizen. And that means taking care of your family, having access to information regarding balancing your budget, how to grow wealth, how to save, invest. All of that plays into being a good citizen, but also having access to those resources. And so I'm hoping what you did last year, what we're doing this year, will build on those opportunities to provide those resources and knowledge on both civic and financial literacy. So thank you for sharing that.
And if I may, Juan, just sort of build on that point, another conversation that I just had at the California Lawyers Association annual meeting was with a woman of color who made the comment during the board meeting that she no longer encourages other people of color to go to law school unless they know they can pay for it. And that really scared me, right? Because we are so working for pathways to success, especially into the legal profession for diverse people, right? Because we need that. And to hear her say that, I actually spoke with her later and I said, unpack that for me, because that really worries me. And she basically said, look, the cost of law school is crushing, and she doesn't think she'll ever get out from under her own student loans. And so, that is a financial literacy discussion that we need to have. And and as I was alluding to, it goes into the broader discussion of how we set up our systems beyond just the individual, to allow individuals, if they take the time to understand how to financially responsibly move forward with their lives, but that they can, right? They also have to be able to. Right. And so I think we need to work
financial decision
from both directions.
Right. You're absolutely right. So many people make decisions, and the first question is, how much does it cost? Right. From simply going shopping for a new pair of shoes to, as you said, investing in your future to get a law degree or some other education. So both issues are critically important, and they are linked together. So we agree. Let me ask you something else about your journey as chair and your leadership in our section. What piece of advice were you given on your journey to become chair that you thought was most helpful to you that you would pass on to future chairs or bar leaders?
Well, the most helpful piece of advice I was given was to remain flexible. You have, 3 years to plan, really, right? And you probably start to really plan the year before you become chair.
Right.
And you work hard at those plans. And so you think you know what you're going to do in your year. And then if your year's like mine, like day 2 on the job, Biden pulls out of Afghanistan and we have to pivot and help all the women lawyers and judges who had put Taliban leaders in jail, and now they're out and they're seeking revenge. And I mean, it was just, wow, first day out. That wasn't what I had planned. Right. Right. So you do have to be ready to pivot, and you do have to be very flexible. And I think that was excellent advice. I think I blessedly managed to both fulfill the plans I had, as well as respond to all of the crises and emergencies. But they came at a personal cost to me, Juan. I'll be honest. I couldn't focus on my own solo practice at all last year, and it basically evaporated. So I'm now in a position of having to rebuild my own practice or my own career. But I do feel it was valuable, and I made a difference. At least I certainly hope I did, because I need to feel that was worth it.
No, yes, you did have an impact, and you did make a difference. That's a good follow-up to my next question or thought. Do you have any thoughts on it, how lawyers can balance work-life responsibilities with respect to bar service and their careers, and how to really balance that? Is it any thoughts you have around that? Or are you still recovering from your year?
Well, I am still recovering, but I do have some thoughts. My whole life, I'm going to be honest here, and I'm going to speak with a female hat on for a second. I was really raised that women were supposed to go into traditional roles of raising a family and staying home and being homemakers. And I pushed against that when I got my law degree, right? But when I got my family, I needed to prioritize my family. That was sort of inbred in me, if you will. So I have always tried to do that balance. And I credit the ABA for giving me the opportunity to keep my professional life afloat, if you will, during those years. So I'm very, very grateful to the ABA for that. But I do see that it's very difficult for women who have prioritized families to come back fully into the profession once that role has been fulfilled. And that's something I think we need to work on. So I don't have a great answer. No one has come up with a great answer of how to balance it. I think that you just have to decide what your first priority is, and then be true to that. Right. And understand you really can't do everything 100%. You know, I've seen people try and they burn out. You can't do it. You have to have a clear sense of your own priorities, and then you have to stick with that and be okay with that.
Right. Your response reminds me of the work that past President Hillary Bass did around women in the law, and did work around and studied why women are leaving the profession. And she had a whole series of discussions and research around that question. So it still remains a problem today, and it's a real challenge that a lot of women face in our society, and men need to probably find ways to be more helpful and supportive in those spaces as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, and I do see that changing, Juan. You know, yeah. Again, at this meeting I was just at, the chair of the CLA board was needing to leave the meeting because he was in control of his kids. He had responsibility, right. And he had his parents there supposedly helping with the kids, and then the dad got lost, and he literally had to go. So he was dealing, you know, with both generations, and clearly he was doing that. So right. I was, you know, I felt for him. I'm like, I've been in those shoes. It was right. Nice to see those shoes be loafers on a male foot, you know. So I felt like, okay, because he's had that experience, he's now going to understand when other people have that experience. So right. that is going to help.
Exactly. So when you were chair, and now that you're the past chair, have you thought about how you'd like to see our section evolve and grow in the future, just generally? Any thoughts you have around the direction of the future of the section?
Well, again, the theme for my year was unity through civic literacy. So I worked very hard last year to really bring our section together. One thing that you asked advice that I received, but I'm going to give you my advice now from what I learned, is that, you know, we do have those 21 or 22, depending how you count, substantive committees, right?
Right.
And everyone in those committees is very passionate about whatever that subject matter happens to be, and very focused on doing everything they can in that area. We don't always come together as a united front when one or the other of those subject matters is in crisis at a given moment. And it's not because we don't want to, it's just because people are very, very focused, like I said. So I really worked hard to make us feel like a family, the kind of family that supports each other. You know, we all have different interests, but we support each other.
Right.
And so I would like to see you and everyone following me build on that and keep that momentum going in terms of unifying and raising the awareness of everyone that, you know, we have to back each other up on our different issues that matter to us.
And being able to see the intersection between the issues that each committee is dealing with.
Absolutely.
Issues
there's a huge intersection between all of it, of course.
That's right.
And I do think people sometimes forget that as well. So yeah, it's very important.
I agree. You know, another initiative that you started that we're also going to continue this year is the One Section, One Book, where you encouraged us to read a book about a particular topic. Yours was around, of course, civic education. I'm wondering, what are you reading today? Or what's the last book you read?
Well, that's an interesting point, because I'm not sure I've had much time to read. I will say, if people haven't read our One Section, One Book from last year, which was Schoolhouse Burning by Derek Black, I really enjoyed that and got a lot out of it. Again, just learning how our democracy really was formed to be dependent on free public education. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Derek Black is a scholar, and he makes that point very well, and brings us through, you know, the founding all the way up to current day, and how that plays into our democracy. So I really enjoyed that. Another book that I read recently, I don't know if it's the most recent, was The Color of Law, which I think fits right in with your initiatives, and discusses really, you know, how financially certain groups of our our citizenry were kept from getting generational wealth, from being able to purchase real property,
right.
How those rules developed, how they couldn't get loans, the loans weren't guaranteed by the federal government, how the law itself and how the law was set up really functioned to keep certain segments of our society down. So I learned a lot from that. I was a little appalled because it actually talks about places that were very close to where I grew up. And I realized that was to an extent happening on my parents' watch, if you will. And not that they were in a position personally to change it, but I feel like they should have seen it more and been more outraged, perhaps, and I don't think they saw it exactly, although I do remember them saying things to me like, Stanford, we lived near Stanford University, and Stanford I remember them saying when I was young, Stanford's a little hypocritical because they talk, this social justice game, but there's East Palo Alto right next to them and they do nothing about it. I remember them saying that, but, I just feel like a lot more should have been done. There should have been a lot more outrage that would have maybe stopped, prevented, changed that earlier.
Yeah, The Color of Law is a fascinating book that really highlights and tells the story of how law was used to oppress people of color all throughout the country through public policy, and how oftentimes our wealth gap and inequity was put in place by law, by policy. Mm-hmm. So it's a great book that I encourage everyone to read if they when they can.
And the next book I'm planning to read is along those lines too, and it's called Freedom to Discriminate: How Realtors Conspire to Segregate Housing and Divide America. So if you haven't read that one, that's by Gene Slater, Slater. Gene is Gene. So I'm looking forward to delving into that. I've downloaded it to my Kindle and I just haven't had a chance to get into it yet.
Well, great. So on a much lighter note, as we begin to wrap up, what do you do for fun, Beth? And what is one thing most people don't know about you?
Oh my gosh. I get asked that question so much now that I'm running out of things that people don't know. But what I really enjoy doing when I can is snorkeling or scuba diving if I get that opportunity. I guess a lot of people don't know I'm a NAUI certified diver. And I really like that because to me, it's like being invited into another world. When you're down there with the fish, they don't care. You think they'd look at you and run the heck the other way. You look so different, but they just swim alongside you. They accept you for who you are. They don't worry about even the reef sharks I've seen are like, yeah, okay, whatever. They really don't care. And it's so nice. And they don't even seem worried about anything, Juan. Like they don't worry if they're going to get eaten.
Not a care in the world.
They're just doing their thing and not worried about it, and seems so peaceful, and there are no cell phones. so I really do enjoy that. The other thing that people may not know about me is I really love current and classic Mustangs, Ford Mustangs.
Do you own one?
I do actually own two. One was I bought it from my family, but it was a family car. My little Annie Hazel, who's like the little lady from Pasadena, only she was in San Francisco, bought it in 1966 off the lot there. I think it was even built at the NUMMI plant, which we now know is a Tesla plant, but used to be the Ford plant. So, it goes all the way back there, and it's that butter yellow color, which matches my hair, and I love it. And so I have that because I just couldn't see it sold outside the family when that was going to happen. So I bought that from the family members. And then because I really do know Mustangs, the first one came out in 1964 and a half. So in 2014 and a half, I bought a new convertible Mustang, which I'd always wanted, a convertible. So there you have it. It's a very inexpensive sports car, as sports cars go. but it is a lot of fun. And I say it's the true 50th anniversary edition, even though Ford claims the 2015 is the true 50th. So I disagree.
Your best day is driving the convertible to the beach to go snorkeling?
With the top down, yeah.
With the top down.
That would be the best day, yeah, for sure.
That's great. That sounds like a lot of fun. My last question is real simple. If you could wake up tomorrow and be anything except a lawyer, what would you be and why?
You know, I've actually thought a lot about that question lately. And I used to say it would be a professor, and I have been a professor at times in my life. But I think I'm now at the point in life where if I could be anything, and I don't feel qualified yet to do this, it would be a spiritual healer. As you know, I read the Bible.
Yes.
And I know of a lady named Mary Baker Eddy who was purported to be able to heal people just by looking at them, because she just had so much divine love in her eyes that they would just see her and be healed. Wow. And I would love to be like that. I'm getting emotional. I'm not there yet, but I would aspire to that.
Thank you for sharing that. It's so powerful. And as a person of faith myself and ordained minister, I definitely have compassion for what you're saying, and think that is so important that we, those of us who have a faith tradition, highlight that. Not many lawyers talk about their faith too often in public spaces. So thank you for sharing that. And
well, you asked.
Well, my friend, I'm so glad that you were willing to be with us today to share with us not only a bit more about yourself, but to really highlight the connection between civic literacy and financial literacy, and showing the importance of bar leaders trying to build on the work of their predecessors, so that the branding of the section, branding of the Bar Association has some continuality to it, so members can see some continuity and know what to expect, and and help to grow and make things better from year to year. So I'm glad that you and I were partners. I was honored to be your chair-elect, and I'm so glad that you are my immediate past chair, and look forward to our continued partnership and friendship.
Thank you, Juan, and I want you to know that I'm here to support you in any way I can this year, and I'm very excited for your initiatives.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.